This is Agent versus Lender.
Let's get ready to rumble! If you're a top real estate agent, broker, lender, or coach, this is your podcast. This is Agent versus Lender. If it's about real estate or the lending industry, it's fair game. This is Agent versus Lender. And now the hosts, Ron Pippin and Taylor Archibald.
Welcome to another episode of Agent versus Lender. And today we have with us Jennifer Zanz-Olsen. And we are going to be talking a little bit about purpose in life, purpose in business, just our purpose. And I'm actually really excited to talk about this because it's been a journey for me to figure out what my purpose is. And it wasn't until recently that I kind of figured it out, because I always thought it was, I don't know, maybe I will save that. I always thought it was something else. I'll save that and maybe well, I'm sure we'll probably get into that.
Yep.
So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you here. Tell me a little bit, let's introduce yourself. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Tell us what you do and
Sure.
What's your purpose?
Yeah. So I'll save my purpose for a little bit too. That'll be in the discussion for sure. But I'll start with just telling you a little bit about my background, who I am, where I come from. But I'm Jennifer Zanz-Olsen. I'm the founder of Laughing Lotus Wellness, and my purpose as we speak, in terms of my business, is working with business professionals and entrepreneurs who are feeling like they kind of had their dream job and are feeling empty and disconnected. And so what I do is I go in and teach them to reignite and connect with their purpose and success again. And whether that means that we keep them in the same space doing the same thing, or we change lanes, which we'll talk about in a little while, that's also a part of what I do. And so that's kind of the space I'm working in right now. But my background is really in clinical social work. So I have a master's degree in social work, and I worked in a psychotherapy practice for years. Much of that was private practice where I was the business owner. So I've owned now 2 businesses. And I just really loved that piece of my journey. I went and got a certification in yoga, and I have a certification in crystal healing and Reiki. But really, they were really adjuncts to my love and passion for meditation. And so all of those things are kind of coming off of that big spoke of the clinical social work. And really, my being called to change lanes was what inspired all of that next layer of my journey, because I thought I landed in clinical social work and that was going to be it forever. And started doing it and realizing that I needed to pivot and change lanes as well. So I've been through this journey too, and shifting and transforming. And so I'm just really passionate about helping people connect to that for themselves in their journey, getting them right, feeling like they're doing meaningful work or they're deeply connected to their purpose in some facet of their lives.
I'm excited to talk about changing lanes because I've done that before. I have changed lanes multiple times. And I'll be honest with you, I've been doing this I'm going into 26 years now. Yeah. And multiple times I've thought about changing lanes. I didn't, but I did think about it. And there were some just big life events that made me think through that. So
yes.
So I'm sure we'll get into that too. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So tell me, what is purpose? Why is that important? Why do we need to know what purpose is? And
So I just, for fun, and because I'm kind of a language nerd, I don't know why, language has always been really important to me. I'm an avid reader. I just find, and particularly doing therapy for 20 plus years, you really want to be mindful of the language you're using with your clients as you're working. And so
are you talking like scripting? Is that the same kind of thing, like scripts with? And I don't like scripts. I don't like.
No. Where I'm going is I like the idea of being mindful of the words we're using, right? So let me give you just a sweet example that kind of it outlines this. So for New Year's, people set New Year's resolutions. I hate that word resolution. Resolution to me insinuates that there's something broken or wrong. We don't have to solve it. We don't need to be solved. We're not broken. So I will call it a revision. So when I did a retreat this year, I called it a New Year revision. We revised our intentions. So I think it's how we look at it, and that language carries a lot of weight. And so when I say that, what I did was I nerded out like I normally do. And I looked up purpose right in the dictionary, and it says, but this is actually really beautiful. It says the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists, right? So that's like the dictionary definition. And so for me though, and I love this, I'm going to quote Maya Angelou, who I absolutely love. And this is something I've been quoting for years about what I think I'm doing and why we're all here. But it said, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So no matter what you're doing in your journey, right, that's kind of my hallmark is, am I looking at how I leave people feeling when they're done being in my space or working with me? And so that's just kind of one of my hallmarks. But I think purpose is really about living into your specific gift. So this is now how I would define it without any like influence. Of course there's influence, but from my perspective, it's really stepping into the thing that makes you who you are, the unique spark, the divinity within. I'll try not to go too woo because your poor people might not know what hit them. But I really, truly believe that it's really about what makes you who you are. There's a couple of things that are just always going to be really sweet about each of us. There's something that just a message, a gift, a talent, right? So you could take someone who is exceptionally gifted at violin, and one of their purposes in this life is to create that music, right? So somebody else could be an incredible architect, and they're going to go out and they're going to create these buildings. Frank Lloyd Wright, I mean, for example, we're still talking about him, right? He paved this incredible trail with his ingenious design. And so it's really about stepping into the space of really what makes you who you are, the unique marker that you're going to bring to the world. And I love Wayne Dyer. I love all things Wayne Dyer, but Wayne Dyer said, in my life, I don't want to die with a song in my heart. And what he's getting at is whatever gift we have in here, it is our job to send that out and share it with the world. And then furthermore, there's another quote by a woman, and I think it might be Martha Graham. Forgive me if I'm misquoting who that is, but she talks about it's not your job to be worried about how it's received or in what avenue it's received. Your only business in this lifetime is to make sure you put it out there. And so I really love that inspirational idea of like, your only job is to do your thing. Your only job is to do your special, whatever it is, bring it to the universe, whatever facet that looks like, that's really your job. And so it's really shows up, I think, in strengths we have, in our talents that we have, the deep motivation, right? I often think of it as the thing that if I asked you a question about something, you would light up about it and you would talk about it for 20 minutes straight with no breath. You would be so lit up. And even if I didn't know about it, I've got a great friend, his name is Anthony, he works at Polaris, right? He works with snowmobiles and like toys, like, right? These really fun, incredible toys. These like ATVs and all this really cool stuff. And it's not necessarily my shtick, but I can't be in a spot talking with him about it where I don't feel as excited as he is, because it literally vibrates out of his soul. He loves his work so much. It's so deeply personal to him. That's where you know why someone's here. Because when you're in that energy, you'll feel this like, oh, like all of a sudden you're excited. You're like, wait a minute, I don't snowmobile, but somehow I'm deeply excited about what you're talking about. So that's always how I think we know we're bumping into and rubbing up against that idea of like what our purpose is we'll feel that enthusiasm. We'll feel that magnetism, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. You've said so much in such a short amount of time. I don't even know. I'll be honest. I don't even know where to go with this, because
well,
I mean, my head's spinning. But it's because I can tell that you love what you do. And so you just said, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you really should watch this on YouTube, because it's not just in her voice, it's in her actions. And it shows up in what she is saying. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this, because it's obviously your passion. So
it is.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah. I think to talking about, I want to give it a great example of a friend of mine and how how might we know we're bumping into something? So I talked quite a bit already about how we might know we're in purpose, right? The experiences, the magnetism, the enthusiasm, it's our strength, it's our passion, we could talk about it forever. We feel it inside. Those are all those like beginning markers of like, okay, I'm getting close to something, right? So I have a friend, and this is really great story. She wanted to be a virtual assistant for a minute, and she started going to these networking events. And I'm a big storyteller. Storytelling is how I think we build our lives and connect.
Love stories. I love stories. Totally connect with stories.
Yeah, totally. I love it so much. So she goes to this networking event. This is so great. And she'd had a really beautiful weight loss story. I mean, her journey is 100%, 110% inspirational. Okay. So she gets to this virtual event where she's going to, network, and she's going to talk about being a virtual assistant. And she shows up, and I'm sure she's professionally dressed and looks beautiful. And she gets done, and I go, how did your event go? And she goes, well, it was pretty good, but I ended up talking to everybody about wellness and fitness. I started laughing. And here's a great case in point. At that juncture, she was legitimately, she was stepping into her purpose without even knowing she was doing it, right? Her job was going to be a virtual assistant. Amen. And great. Pay the bills by all means, right? We all have to do that too. But how sweet to me that she's talking to all these people in this room. And the one thing that she's building energy around, the space that people are getting called into her around, is fitness and wellness and her weight loss journey, and having this passion for trying to help other people do that. And how incredible that was, right? And so I always think it's really funny that that's kind of one of our tells as well, is if I'm out there in the world and I'm doing something and it's like, it's like, okay, and I'm doing my jam. But when I get in this lane and I start talking about it, I'm like, and the vibes go up, and pretty soon people are getting pulled in, and this might not even be my job, right? But all of a sudden people are gathering around me, and they're asking questions, and they're engaged, and that they're connecting. I always think that's one of our tells, is like when we start talking about something and people start gathering in, and they can feel that, like, there we go, like there's the money kind of a thing. And so I love that story about how Sarah went in and did this, and then that's okay. Like, however that turns out for a journey, for maybe that was just for someone's purpose for a minute, but I have no doubt at that moment, that was one of her callings, because that's how it came out. It was so clear that people wanted to hear about her journey from her. And so I just think that's really cool how it shows up. And what I really want to do is help people be aware of how to look for that, right? Because sometimes I just think we don't know to look for it. Like, yeah, like, where are you lit up? Where are people being magnetically drawn into you? Like, in what spaces do they want to hang out and ask you questions and be engaged with you? So I just love her story. I think that's so sweet. And it never left me, because I could just imagine her. I know her heart so well. I'm like, oh, I can bet you there would have been 10 people that would have signed up for her, like to do, like, seriously, like weight loss or training, or she would have had signups, because that's how passionate she is. So I think that's such a cool thing how it shows up that way.
Yeah. So a couple stories is
good.
The podcast that we just released, it probably 2 times before this one,
okay,
is there's a guy that had weight loss, and he lost probably half of his body weight.
Yep.
And for him, and this is a guy that I knew since he's been like 12 years old.
Okay.
And he's always kind of been a big boy.
Okay.
To say, if I would have walked past him down the street, I would have never recognized him, just because he looks so different. But he lights up about that when he talks about his journey and how he lost weight, and and those little small changes along the way that he did. It was really fun. It was really fun to talk to him.
That's so neat.
That's a podcast with Spencer Sullivan, if you're interested in that one.
Neat.
And then the other day I was talking to somebody that's actually a friend of mine that called me about, should he refinance? And I know that sounds like, what a boring topic. But man, I tell you, I talked to him about why he should and why he shouldn't. And it's not just simply about interest rate. It's more about so this is now I'm going to nerd out.
Oh, good.
So it's about running amortization schedule. And are you really saving money in the long run? Because it costs money to refinance, and are financially better off. So we had like a 45-minute conversation just about, should I refinance?
Right.
And that's probably not everybody's thing. But my thing,
That's great.
And I can like talk about it. and I can put it in terms that maybe you hadn't thought about before.
Right.
Because most people just think, is it a better rate? And there's way more to it than that. So I won't go into that because I'll be here for 45 minutes. But
I love that.
That's where, so that is my passion because like I know it inside and out.
Right. And see, I think that's so neat too, that it's something that you were talking about, how you have a capacity to sit with people in it and walk them through it. And I think that's another layer of something we might be looking for is in working with people for 20 plus years. One of the things you have to one of the things I would hope that people have a gift for is when you're talking about mental health, or you're talking about purpose, you're talking about these things, they can be really expansive, big, deep conversations, and your job is to make sure that they come in bite-sized pieces, because that's really how we learn. And so I think there's this talent that you'll also find, as my speculation, if you start poking around for your purpose, is like, where do I have the talent, like you said you had, to like break this down and dig deep into it and really make meaning in it. And so I think that's another area that we might find, is that it's also an area where you might be really great at helping people make meaning in it. And so like, I would be fascinated by what you said, because you would explain it to me in a way that I don't get it. And if you're giving me a new lens, that's a talent, that's a gift. And might be just part of your incredible purpose. And so I actually love that you went there without even thinking about that as one of the things I would put on there. I would add that I'm guessing that that's another area you're going to find, is that you can teach it from the core because it is so deep for you that it just comes right from your heart space. So that's beautiful.
So I don't know where you're going to go with this. So how, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but
you're good. Go ahead.
How do we find that? How do we know what our purpose is? Because a lot of people don't know. So I heard somebody talk about purpose once, and they go, I don't want purpose. I don't want purpose in my life because it just puts too much pressure on me.
Oh,
but I don't think that's true. I don't think that's really true.
No.
I don't think that's really true. But
I don't either.
I have heard that. So
yeah,
I think it actually takes I think it takes pressure off of you knowing that.
Right. I would hope people would feel, I'm trying not to use all of my energy words for people who are like maybe new to this whole idea. Right. But I think you feel aligned, right? What I find is that when people feel in purpose, they feel aligned. And so how do you arrive at that? I think this is layers of steps, right? So the hard thing is defining how to figure this out is a whole big thing, right? But I think some things are engaging in learning, which I know sounds really funny, but I'm a big fan of personal growth. And so I think whether you're listening to audiobooks or podcasts, or whether you're engaging in taking courses, I would want people to be expansively trying on all sorts of stuff, because unless we're trying different things, we don't know what lights us up necessarily. I jokingly think that I still have friends that tell me, Jen, you're so lucky that you always knew what you wanted to do. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and they're in their 40s, right? So this this can feel like a lifelong journey of arriving at something. It isn't like something we come out of the womb and bam, we just automatically know. If only it felt that simple. For some of us, I think I just knew from a really young age. People always talked to me about their issues and struggles. And it was just one of the things that felt really natural to me. And I was always a really natural people reader. So it makes perfect sense to me. And so for me, it was very, very clear, but I understand that I've had, my journey looks more like when I needed to pivot because I came out of alignment, and I would be happy to share a part of that story too. But I would really encourage you to do personal growth. I would encourage you to talk to the people around you. I'm going to be honest. If you're really struggling with this, one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself is incorporate your community, your loved ones, and ask them, when we're spending time together, when I'm working, when I'm doing this, where do you see me shine? And it's vulnerable. So the one thing I always talk about, right, it's a little vulnerable to reach out to people and say to someone like, hey, would you give me this feedback? Because you're a little bit like, ooh, I don't know what I'm going to get. I will tell you, I did this journey not long ago, and I was absolutely flabbergasted by the journey. I mean, every response I got back, I cried. Every one. There wasn't a single one I got back. Because it just, even when you believe you know where your light is supposed to shine in the world, having somebody else reflect it back to you in different language and in a different lens was absolutely one of the most profound journeys of my entire life, hands down. And so when I say going into your community, into your family and friends, ask some people, gosh, I'm just curious about this. How do you look at me? What do you see in me? What are my strengths? Where do I light up when we're talking? That's really what I want you to look at. Where do I feel the most excited in life? When I am the most engaged, my husband's a mechanical engineer. He's most engaged and excited when he's creating. That's where he vibrates, because that is his magic. His magic is unraveling and making sense of things, taking them apart, putting them back together again, and inventing things. That is the way his brain works. And so that's right. So if you get him talking about something, you can see he begins to write. And so that's what you're looking for. And looking at your passions, like the stuff you enjoy the most. Is it gardening? Is it singing? Is it playing an instrument? I mentioned this already. There could be so many things and areas where I think it's really a lot about, honestly, like awareness and like self-exploration, like growing into a space of understanding where you feel like you are being called, right? And so that's kind of, I often say it like as a calling, like you're getting called to do something different. And so I don't know if that makes sense or if that answers the question, Ron, but maybe you have any other questions or thoughts on that. That's kind of where I would say I would recommend people kind of begin a journey.
No, I love that. I hadn't thought about doing that, but I might do that. I think that's really because what I think is my journey may not be showing up that way. And so I think I may be on the right path.
Yes.
People are going, why are you doing this?
Right.
Instead, right. Why are you not doing this? Because
right.
Like you are really good at X.
Exactly.
Y.
Exactly.
Probably where you're talking about maybe a possible shift. And when all of a sudden you realize, you know what I'm doing, it's a job, but
yes,
it's what I love.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes. And so for me, I think that's part of my journey is my journey was, at each layer, I was really fired up and felt super connected. So, I mean, the way that I fell into social work, I was going to go into psychology. I got to college. I went to an advisor. They were like, do you want to do X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, not really. And they're like, then go to social work. I would have never picked a social work class ever in my life. Divine guidance. Go to social work class. Boom, done. Knew it. The very first minute I stepped foot in that class, I was like, this was meant for me. So that began my social work journey, right? So I do that. Then I graduate. Awesome. Get a job. Not doing what I feel like I'm being called to do. Like the population I'm working with, but still it's like not quite right. I'm not like loving it. Like I love the people. The people I always really enjoyed. The people were never the issue. It was the avenue with which I was providing a service. And so I was like, okay, it's time to go get my master's degree because I really want to be able to go deeper into these issues of the people in their struggles and their mental health. I wanted to be able to go in with them and work more deeply in that area. So then the next layer is going and get my master's degree. So I do that. I graduate. I start my journey of this practice, loving my clients. My clients were the reason I showed up to work every day. And then as I started to practice long enough, I started to get the same niggling. And that's always how I know. It's like, there's something like when I get to the end of the week and I'm like, peace out. That's always one thing I would say. If you're leaving your job, this is for the business owner or the entrepreneur. If you're leaving your work every week, that's supposed to be your dream job. And you're like, see ya. That's a mark. Like, I might want to revisit why it is I'm like, can't wait to get out of here. Right? I need to examine what's going on for me that this is no longer fitting like it once did. And when I tell you was so passionate about my practice and my work for so many years, I really was. And so again, what I would say is each of those moments, and this is how I would describe it, were lane changes. They weren't purpose changes, right? So again, the purpose has stayed the same. The purpose of my being here, planted, rooted in this earth is never changed. The lane in which I do it is what changes. And that's where I think it's important for people to investigate. Is it really truly my purpose needs to shift, or is it just that I need a lane change? I need to pivot into something that feels more like it fits me. And that was where I started. And so starting down a path of doing my own energy work and healing and going to do my yoga certification was completely my lane change. And then what I found was I was like, I'm not really reaching people again in the same way I want to. I'm now being called to reach people in a different layer, in a different way of their being, to support their journey here. And so each time I did that, the purpose was the same. The lane was just changing and I was making a pivot. And so that's really where when I talk about that lane change, that's where I would go. I think your purpose always stays the same. It's just the lane changes.
Yeah. So what was going through my head when you were talking about this is, a lot of people probably don't know that I worked, well, people that know me and are close to me know this, but I worked on, and I think you know this because one of my videos
Yes.
that I've done is that I worked on the Space Shuttle rocket booster program.
So neat. Yeah.
Long ago. And it got to the point where I did not love that.
Yeah.
I did not love it. In fact, when I finally left, they were having some layoffs. Okay. And I went to my boss and I just told him, hey, I know that our section is going to get hit. We're going to layoffs. I said, I'm really okay if I go. So don't stress about me going because I'm
good.
And he turned to me and goes, Ron, thank you. That's pressure off of me. Yeah. And so when that day came, that layoffs were coming, I knew I was going because I already told them that I'm ready to go. And so I made a shirt that said free at last.
Oh, that's awesome.
I wore that to work that day. My boss saw that and he says, well, I guess we don't need to belabor this point. He said,
oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So he pulled me in and they sent me to HR, and HR has, they're used to dealing with people that are all depressed and they're like, oh, what am I going to do? Are crying. And I go in, hey man, how you guys doing? And they started to laugh. They go, we don't have to worry about you, do we? I said,
nope.
It's I'm going.
That is amazing.
So I knew that was not my passion.
Right.
So I made that shift.
Right.
And that was a hard shift. I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
I knew that wasn't it.
Yeah.
So
and I think sometimes those are the most powerful. When I knew I was on the cusp of leaving my practice, but I had a whole bunch of, and we won't get into it today, but I had a whole bunch of stories about why I shouldn't do that and sense of responsibility and all these things. And here or there. But the idea is that I really had this sense that I needed to make a transition, and I just had been struggling to pull the plug, be okay, there was just two of us that own the practice anymore. And it was a big deal for me. I really was I have this responsibility, this practice and all that we've built and blah, blah, blah. And so it was really hard for me. And when finally it was really funny, I kept contemplating, when am I going to tell Brian that I'm leaving? When am I going to, and he came in one day, we were having to be in the kitchen area. I was getting my lunch and he goes, Jen, we're trying to talk about new space and we're thinking about, I'm just trying to get my brain around this. And I'm wondering if, you're planning on staying on or you plan on doing something. I go, no, I'm leaving. Sure he didn't know. It was probably and I think he energetically knew, he was picking it up. I mean, I had been doing other stuff. Yeah. He knew my attention, my energy was flowing elsewhere. It wasn't rocket science, but I think it was really funny. That was the perfect invitation, the perfect moment when he would look at me and say, and I was like, yeah, no, it's time to pivot. And it was this really profound minute, right? It doesn't sound profound when I'm saying it here, but I had been gnawing on this whole thing. And when am I going to just be over and done with this and put a line in the sand for when Laughing Lotus Wellness is going to come on board full time? When am I going to make this? This is my whole heart and soul is going to be in this business. And that was the pivotal moment where I was yep, it's time so I have to now put the gas on because this is now right. I put myself out there. And so thank God, he cornered me in the kitchen while we were having lunch and asked me this profound question without knowing the impact it was going to have in my journey, that it finally set me free to say, yeah, you know what? I got to pivot. I got to change lanes. And I wish you well. And I'm sad about it. And this was something that I've been in for years and I value it. And we set off on a journey together that was really profound and life-changing for myself and so many of us. And I'm grateful for that. And it's time for me to go. And so, yeah, I love your story. I love it. And that was me. Bye. bye, like done, like just done. Like I just knew I was done and I needed to be done. And so I think those are some of those tells, if you will, like, oh, there it is. Like I got to go. Like there's something that's because I think those minutes are where we're being energetically pulled into another area because we have another layer of our purpose to live into. That's the way that I would define that for us. If that makes sense, is I think you're being pulled into it for a reason. And sometimes it's like we lose a job and we're like, oh my God, panicking, right? Like what am I going to do?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's nothing that's more, like jarring, right? To all of a sudden I had this job and I thought I was doing my thing and, and now I've lost my job and I don't know what to do. And so it can be really scary, but you're being called, and it's no different than being really successful. And you hear this all the time. It's very sad, but when you're very successful, if you're in a business, right? If you're a high level professional or if you're owning your own business and all of a sudden it was this dream thing and you got there and went, this isn't what I thought.
Right.
This isn't what I thought. I arrived here and I thought I was going to be lit up every day and I was going to roll out of bed with vigor and I couldn't wait to get there and I was going to feel creative and I was in the zone with this job and I was going to feel like I was living my best life. And I got here and I got the money and I got the success and I got the accolades. And now I'm legitimately like, I don't have meaning attached to it. Maybe I feel depressed or anxious about going to work because now I feel so misaligned that I'm having these other symptoms that are kind of telling me I'm like not in the right space anymore. And it doesn't mean you lost purpose, right?
Okay.
But it will feel like that. It can feel like we lost our purpose. We lost our fire. We lost our, what we're here to do. You didn't lose that. You're being called to go somewhere else. And so I just like thinking about it that way.
So what do you say to somebody that's feeling like that? Like right now, like I've either lost my purpose or I'm like feeling like I'm trapped in my job and I can't wait for the weekend. What do you say to somebody that's doing that right now? That
we need to begin again.
Okay, that's an easy statement, but it's easier said than done.
It sure is. It sure is. And when I say that, what I mean is the Lotus, right? So Laughing Lotus Wellness. And this is just a little bit of like my soul work here is the Lotus. If you do you know anything about the Lotus at all, Ron? What your question? Do you know much about a Lotus?
No, I be honest. No, I know that I've heard it and I know that it has is that like your chakra and is that like yin and your yin?
Oh, Ron, bless your heart.
I don't know if Lotus, wait, you're talking about like yoga, right?
No.
Okay, see?
To
answer your question,
you took us on a world tour of all the things energetic though, Ron. I'm so impressed. But it's a flower. And so I was going to start much simpler than you did, but I mean, kudos to you. I'm impressed with your
Lotus flower. Of course, I'm going way more complicated than where you're going.
So, right. So the Lotus, the symbolism of the Lotus is this. The Lotus is this beautiful white, pristine flower, and it rests on the top of like mucky ponds and gross lake water, wherever. And the magic of the Lotus is that it sinks into the mud every single night and comes up in the morning completely pristine.
I didn't know that. That's actually cool.
Isn't that so cool?
Yeah.
And so the reason that I began to get really excited about that was because it's a symbol for our journey in being able to renew ourselves and begin again anytime we need to.
Take a break right now.
Yeah, my apologies. I totally did not. I thought he was going to be fine. I don't know why he did this last week, ruined my entire live meditation with a group of people. I was literally, I'm trying to teach. There's no one to take a pause. I'm teaching and my dog in the back, meow, meow. And people are like commenting I'm like, oh my God, this is not happening to me right now. This is not
We're totally leaving this in.
Oh,
because this is unexpected. The reason why is because this is an unexpected event that you didn't plan on.
Right.
And we go through unexpected events that we don't plan on all the time. And and it's just a matter of how we solve those and how we react to them that can make a difference in our life, right?
Yeah. And
this is actually a great example of that. It's a small
I'm so glad that you're enjoying it. I'm telling you, right? Everybody in my meditation is like, can we meet him? So here I pull up my little Shih Tzu and I'm like, this is the culprit. And they're like, he's adorable. I'm like, well, I thought he was adorable till he started wrecking my meditation. But everybody was so great, right? They flowed with it. I was the one having an issue. They were like, just keep going. You're fine.
I know, totally. Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So as I was saying about the Lotus it's the idea of renewal. And I want people to know that you get to begin again as many times as you need in your life. You can begin again the next day. You can sleep and start fresh the next day. You can start fresh from one breath to the next. There's all these opportunities we have to begin again. And I think that's really empowering to us. And so if you're really struggling, when I would look at someone and say, right, and the laughter, of course, is my style, is to use laughter in every single component of what I teach and how I work. That's kind of one of the superpowers, I would say, that's on my cape. And so, right, but I would say we need to begin again. And so when it sounds really simple, what I mean is we got to go all the way back to kind of ground zero and look at like, how did we get to where we are? Right. That's that clinical wisdom stuff talking, is we're going to go back in time and like, help me understand how you got to be where you are in your journey. We want to understand that. Where are the spaces you're stuck? Where can we pivot and help you renew? And then really the biggest piece of work in the beginning of that is helping people understand what their purpose is by looking at some of the magical stuff that I do in my work, in my programs that I walk people through. That's what they do, is they discover their purpose again. And so that's a journey. That isn't something that, right. So when you ask me, it's like, that's a big question. And that's usually a big piece of work. It's not going to take place in like a 10-minute, like, let's go sit at Starbucks and have some coffee. And in 10 minutes, we're going to, if only, and maybe we would be that lucky. But very often, I think it takes some time to really whittle down and spend time in conversation, really understanding and delving into your journey and the places that light you up to help you reconfigure that. Because sometimes along the way, we've forgotten. We've just lost touch with it. Here's what I'm going to tell you. In my therapy office, I really, truly believe that every client that came to me had their answers. I was not some guru. I'm not Jesus. I'm not doling out my magical fairy dust. I really, truly believe that every person I work with comes with their answers already inside of them. And the only thing we have to do is help them uncover it. And so that's really what the work that I do is it's helping people uncover the stuff that it's just blocking it. It's blocking the wisdom. It's blocking their energy. I tend to use meditation for that, right? I would tend to use those effective healing tools and modalities that I have to help people uncover it. Somebody else would have a different bag of tricks. That's just my bag of tricks, right? It's all the clinical work that I've done and then combined with these healing modalities that I like to use. That's how I would help someone uncover it. And so it's a process. And depending on how long someone has been suffering in it is how long the work is going to take. So if somebody's been suffering for 5, 6, 10 years, 20 years, and they come up and they're like, I'm not sure what my purpose is. Well, that's not going to be a week-long journey, right? I mean, it also stands to reason that sometimes if we've really been in it or we're deeply suffering. So if I really got into a space where I'm really actually depressed or anxious or anything like that, that's a more significant level of work because we're going to have to address those needs first.
So we've talked about, sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Just what comes to mind. It's like,
yes,
we've talked about like jobs and
yes,
our employment.
Yes.
It goes way beyond that. This is like,
yes.
Are you stuck? Are you going through a divorce?
Right.
Stuck in a terrible relationship?
Yep.
Or are you just like in your own head?
Yes.
This is just not job related stuff.
It's not.
It's like life stuff, right?
It is. It's absolutely life stuff. And that's really, for me, one of my purposes that I would say, one other than being with people, healing and teaching. And I mean, those are the roles, right? I think one of the things we tend to want to do is put a role on it. But I would really say that my purpose is transformation. And so that's really what I invite, come on in and work with me to find transformation. That I'm hoping I'm a space and an energetic place where people will come in and have transformation. And so exactly, it's bigger than that, right? So that's where I'm going, right? Your profession, your job is one big area because we spend so much time there, right? We spend so much time.
Right.
But I think this is fascinating doing some research that like 9 out of 10 people, according to Harvard Business Review, would legit give up their high paying job for work that was more meaningful. And what does that tell us? That just the money alone or just the accolades, right? It's where I started earlier. It's like just those things alone aren't even enough to carry us. We can think with our heads that that's going to be the space we're going to arrive in. And we'll get there and go, oh, this isn't what I did all the things. I got all the stuff. How am I here? Right. And I now no longer feel at all connected to that. That doesn't have meaning. So it says to me, we are seeking meaning. And meaning making is so super deeply important to all of us in our journey. For most of us, right? Some of us are scared of it, unfortunately, but many of us, meaning making is like a primary source of life. And so, yeah, so it is so much bigger. You're exactly right that it's so much bigger than even just your career. And my belief system is that when you go in and do purpose work, all the parts align. So your business would hopefully align, your profession would hopefully align, but what you're going to find is that in a domino effect, when you really come into contact with what your purpose is and you get really crystal clear on that, you're like, oh, all the things line up. And I can start to really see all the alignment that's showing up in my life, right? And that's another neat thing is that when we are in alignment, when we're in purpose and we're living our best life, all the things start coming in for us. It's like having a megaphone to the universe. And when things are going great and we're really living into our purpose, stuff starts presenting itself like just naturally. We don't have to work at it. It just shows up for us. And so I think that's another thing you can be looking for, right? Is are things just presenting themselves, whether it's business or personally, right? If I really want a relationship, to your point, if I really want a relationship and I get real clear on my purpose and I'm doing my own work and I learn to love myself and I show up in the universe and I really like a partner, but instead of beating myself over the head with a stick and I'm trying to do all these things to make it happen, I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust that when it's time, this is going to roll in. It'll roll in for you. Right. And so I think that that's a piece where what it's so important to understand that exactly what you said, purpose is a domino effect and it's going to affect every single area of your life. I think you're really going to get clear on so many pieces, just getting clear on this incredible portion of why we're all here.
Yeah. Earlier when we first started, I talked about what I thought my purpose, not really my purpose, but what I thought I wanted in life.
Yes.
You just brought it up.
Oh,
I wanted to be like really wealthy. I wanted money.
Sure.
But I found that money is a short-term motivator. It is a long-term motivator.
Right.
And so people that say, hey, I just want money, it's just like, you got to dig deeper than that.
Yes, exactly.
Money is not going to motivate you forever because if money is your motivator, you're never going to get there.
Right.
What I found was once I started making some, my wife and I, we do well.
Yes.
And money is not our issue.
Right.
But if money is your only motivator, you're never going to be done. You're never going to be satisfied. It's a really short-term motivator. It can't be that.
Exactly. And I think that's so true.
What you find too?
Yes, I do. And I think great example, and I wish I could remember the two young men, but one of my very favorite stories that was really a space this locked into my mind was in watching I think it was called Minimalism, and it's a documentary on Netflix. And it's two young men who are like, I want to say, went to school together, really great friends, got to Wall Street, right? Went to school for business, did the whole thing, did the whole map of life. Got there, got to Wall Street, got the high-end jobs, got the money, got the suits, got the cars, got the house, and went, is this all that there is?
Right.
Is this all that there is? And instead, major pivot and moved into this idea of minimalism, wrote a book, traveled the country sharing about minimalism with people. So they had to go through that painful adjustment, that really uncomfortable lane change to really step into their purpose. But I'll guarantee you, if I sat down with them and interviewed both of them and said, tell me what your purpose is, and we did the work and we got super clear, we worked all the way through the layers, and they would say, it's still right here. The purpose hasn't changed. the avenue with which I'm sharing my purpose has changed. And that would be bingo, right? We would know, got it, right? And so that's exactly it. But I think it's so interesting that, and I love their example because that's so true, that we'll get driven by these ideas. Rather, I'll be a successful doctor and I'll have all these, people that want to, like follow me and, like hold me in high regard. Well, like, tell me how happy that keeps you forever. Tell me how happy just the money keeps you, because it won't stay forever. Those things transition and change. So our best source of purpose is something that remains the same, right? It's always there for us. And so I really think that's beautifully said, that we want to think about that money or accolades or things like that. That's going to come and go. That's going to come and go. And I think one of the questions I like to ask people too is like, one of the things to spark you into purpose is, what do you want your legacy to be? So here's my question for you, Ron. Are you ready? I asked Ron ahead of time, like, can I surprise you with a mystery question? I love this, right? And so everybody that I interview, I like to pop off like this just random question, because I think it's so fun, because it's authentic, right? Then you haven't thought about it. I don't want
I have no idea what you're going to ask me.
I know, right? So drum roll, please. No. So here's what I want to ask you. What is your purpose? I would love to hear from you what your purpose is. And then the second layer of that question is, what do you want your legacy to be?
And it's funny you link those together, because my purpose is leaving a legacy. That's
of course. They often should be. Yes.
Is leaving a legacy. So like I told you earlier that I thought that making money. And so I had to go down avenues, entrepreneur, doing different things. I landed in mortgage, totally another story of how that happened. So my purpose, I don't know that I can tell you really clear. So this is, I know. You're looking at me like, I know. But I think most people are in that boat. It's just like, I don't know that I could tell you really clearly.
Right.
I know that family is really a motivator.
Absolutely.
It's really high on my list. It's like, but I want to provide them. And the reason why the money comes in is because I want to provide them a good living. I want to provide the things that money allows us to do, right? Not necessarily the money. Like my wife and I like to travel. We like to go places. We like to do those kind of things. And so the money allows us to do those things. Right. But I've also found that the mortgage industry, I hate to say this on like in a podcast, I don't know if that's the mortgage industry is my purpose, but I'm really good at it.
Yes.
Really good at it.
Right.
And I think my purpose I'm finding that as I start bringing on other loan officers, right, and I start working with other real estate agents, that I'm being able to help them grow. I'm being able to help them understand how to scale and so instead of like being a one-man show, how do you be able to leverage yourself and stop working 60, 70 hours a week and really make more money and not work those crazy hours, because the money offers you things that poor, I'm not saying poor is wrong. Right. Some poor people, some people that don't have a lot of sustenance, and the happiest people that I know. Like exactly. Isn't that funny? It's just like we all are chasing this almighty dollar, and some of the people that don't have a lot of it are some of the happiest people that we know, because they aren't burdened with that.
That's right. Well said.
So,
well said.
But what I'm trying to help people understand is like, man, you don't have to work 60 hours a week. Stop doing that. There's a way to make that happen, and I can help you make that happen.
Right.
So, and it's only been recently that I learned, like, I've set that up in my business, and I'm like, hey, I can help other people do the same thing. You can probably tell, like, I'm lighting up, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Right. Your face gets right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's exactly right. When we get to the space, your face will light up. You start to lean forward. Your heart's shining out. There is a magnetism. And just as soon as you started saying that, there was a shift in what you were talking about. And that's always how we know we're starting to arrive where you're going to go. And so whether you call it, Ron, like whether you're a connector, whether you're like, I hear you, like it's teaching, like look at the balancer, like you're teaching people how to be very successful, but have balance. Like you're teaching them how to do both of those things to hold space for success. But like, by all means, keep your family and your balance, go travel, right? These are things that you're passionate about doing. You found your own way to that. And I'm not saying that's your purpose, but what I'm throwing out there is those are things we would start looking at is look at what you're doing. And so with that being said, I love that. So I'm not saying that's your purpose, but I'm just throwing it out there as a, like, look at the connections that you're making, even just how you're talking about that. Right. And my speculation too, is that if you said, what's your legacy? So tell me what your legacy is.
Well, so my son is working in this industry with me.
Love it.
And so I'm setting this business up so that he can provide for his family and that he doesn't have to go through. I'm 25, 26 years into this business.
Yeah.
And it's taken me 20 years to start all of a sudden connecting the dots and going, right. Why did I waste 20 years? And I'm not like giving it to him. He's working for it.
I believe that.
That means he's working for it.
Yeah.
Because I think if you hand something to somebody, like you give a man to fish or teach a man to fish.
Yes.
So that parable.
Beautiful.
And so I'm teaching him to fish.
I love it.
But I don't want him to go to 20 years of pain like I did.
Yeah. And let me say this though. That's
part of my legacy.
Leaving this his ability to then step into something. And what I love about what you said too, for me, Ron, what really resonates is you wanted it sooner for him. And so I love that you're like, I want him to have his life align more quickly than it took me in mine. And what I would tell you is, and this is just, I can't help it. It's like the coach in me is there's no accidents. You didn't do 20 years of what you did. That's not an act. That's not a waste. And so I would tell the person out there that's listening to this, that if you put some time into something and you're like, oh, it really didn't produce where I want, there's no accidents. Then that was part of the journey that you needed to be in to get to where you are today. You would in fact not be where you are today without that part of the journey. And so right. I always want to encourage people to have compassion for yourself, have appreciation and gratitude. Like, okay, well, that wasn't for me, but now I know what wasn't for me. Sometimes we have to unravel backwards. I sometimes say, and I forget what my quote was, but we have to start at the ending. Sometimes we have to begin at the ending. That's why I ask about legacy. That sounds like the ending. But sometimes to get real clarity, we almost have to start there first. So sometimes we work backwards. It's like, oh, here's all the things I don't want to do. Here's all the choices I don't want to make. Because then I arrive really fully aligned into that solution for myself. And so that's not 20 years lost. It's 20 years not living into where you wanted to be necessarily, but those were all the steps you had to be in to be where you are today, which is magic, right?
You know, what's really funny is what you said is like, you have to start at the ending.
Yeah.
So I asked you if I said, hey, Jen,
yeah,
how do you, if you were to get in your car and drive to Disneyland, how would you get there? Seriously, how would you get there?
Well, I'd probably plug my GPS in and then I would drive my car. Am I missing something?
Okay, but if I didn't have a GPS and I was saying, Jen, I want you to tell me, I'm not going to make you tell me.
No, it's okay.
But if without a GPS and I want you to take which freeway, which roads, which turns, you could probably figure out how to tell me how to get there, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But now if I said, and you're in a completely different state than I'm in. But if I said, well, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm in Oregon.
Yeah, right.
So your path to get to someplace is going to depend on not only where you start, but where you end.
That's right.
Your path is going to be different than somebody else's path.
Absolutely.
So what you're saying is like the path that I just took was my path.
That's right.
It's not anybody else's path. So there's
That's
nothing
right.
wrong with the path that I took.
That's right.
That's my journey for my life.
That's your journey for your life. And furthermore, what's really neat is that you met people, you had experiences that were all getting you ready. Everything we do is like preparation. It's all of it. And so whether or not we see it when we're living it, because it can feel not like that. It can feel purposeless. I mean, all of us, right? I walked a pink cat back and forth, a toy cat in front of KB Toys in Madison, Wisconsin for 8 hours. Okay. I mean, tell me where I was growing spiritually, standing, walking that stupid pink cat back and forth in front of the store, embarrassed as all get out and hoping to God no one saw me that I knew. We've all done those things, but every single layer was meeting people and having experiences and growing into that space. And so I think it's like having that gratitude, like, okay, so I might not have always seen where I was going, but that was all prepping me. Every single journey I have is in preparation for the next step. It's for living into that purpose. And like I said, it's why I like the legacy journey, because I feel like it starts us with someday when I leave the world, what do I want to leave behind? And it's why Maya Angelou, right, her phrase is so profound, is how did I make you feel? And so that's really where I want to garner some energy for people, is like, how do you want to leave this earth when you go? What do you want the legacy to be? One of yours is leaving a business for your son, which is incredible. You're busy building that. That's such a beautiful thing. And what else? Ron, how do you want people to feel about you? What do you want us to remember someday when you leave your body? What would you want us to be left with? And that was what I would want to know from you.
That's a great question.
I was like, I don't know right now.
No, it really is. It's a great question. And I could probably answer part of that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could answer it fully. So
sure.
So I have some work to do.
That's okay. That's okay. And I invite you to do that. And you don't have to we don't all have the answers readily. Like none of us. Mm-hmm. And so we're lucky when we can spend some time, right, engaging in these kinds of thoughts and journeys to help elevate ourselves and our experience here. I don't expect that everyone's going to have those answers. And sometimes it's going to take us some really dig deeping, because mine's transformation. That's one thing. I certainly hope that I leave the world in a different state of transformation, that I pave the trail, Ron, for other people to step into their goodness. Right. That's really, if I had to say, right. But families in there, right. I mean, all the things, right. My relationship, but for me, all of it's about connection. At the end of the day, if you asked me, did I do a great job connecting? Did I connect dots for people to their purpose? Did I connect the dots for myself and where I was supposed to go? Did I connect the dots between my love, myself, my journey, my family? So I think it's, but that's a bigger like life kind of thing. Like, why are we here? But I would say transformation tends to be one of the areas where I would say, yeah, like I'm hoping someday at the end of the road, there's a whole lot of people that felt like because they came into my sphere for whatever reason, that they were transformed in some way. And really that I left the world a better place. One of my personal agreements is to leave every single place that I go in my life a little bit better than it was when I arrived.
I was just going to say that same thing. It's just,
were you really?
Yes, I was
That's
totally
awesome.
going to say that same thing. It's like my wife and I always say the same thing. It's just like we need to leave people and places a little bit better than when we left them.
That's right. And I think that's
I'm not going to say that I'm perfect at that, because I'm not.
Oh no.
But that's our goal.
Right. That's exactly it. Certainly I'm not. I mean, right. I wish I were. I wish I was that elevated in my life, right? That I was floating through life like a guru and I just, sprinkle fairy dust. No, I'm human. I make mistakes. I probably hurt people from time to time. I make mistakes. We all do. But if my one of my legacies I hope to leave, it's just that it's a hallmark in my mind. And so I can remind myself, like when I'm showing up to something, am I trying to create space for this to be just a little bit better, a little bit sweeter, a little bit deeper, a little bit whatever? Am I just leaving it a little better than I found it? And I think it's just a guide. We won't do it perfectly. It's a practice. And that's why I like the ideas of meditations and yogas and things that we're doing. They're called practice. Because we're inviting the imperfection, we're inviting the humanity into it. We don't have to show up expecting perfection from ourselves. That's not real. I like gritty people. I like the people that have lived through some really hard stuff, show up, live in that space, are authentic and vulnerable and showing up into it. Perfection is not a thing for me. It's not, I don't see that as an existence.
It's not possible.
It's not possible. And so whenever someone shows up and tells me their gritty story, I'm like, yeah, bring it. That excites me more because that's real. We can do work with that. We can't work with a person or a situation that they're like, it's perfect. Well, good. Then, then good, do your life, I guess. Because I don't understand that. My life hasn't been perfect. And I'm not perfect by a long shot. It's just, I am a work in progress. And that's what I think we all are. We're in process. We're in practice for living into those kinds of legacies and things like that. Yeah.
Jen, this has been really enlightening for myself. I'm sure it's been for listeners and for those that are watching us on YouTube.
I hope so.
I appreciate you being here, and
thank you.
Make me think. Yeah,
I'm glad. Then that was the point of our doing your podcast, right? That's awesome.
So how can people, if they wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on all social media. So that's one, but really, truly the best way to connect with me, if you want to ask any questions or anything like that, would be to go to my webpage, which is laughinglotuswellness.com. It's a mouthful, but it's just laughinglotuswellness.com. And so, I'm out and around and available, and I welcome people to reach out to me if anything inspired you or you have a question or anything like that. I love engaging with people and connecting around these things because it's powerful conversation. Like you and I had here today, we probably got in here and we didn't know where it was going to go. And I always love that I get challenged. You ask me some hard questions. Like I asked you a hard question or two. That's growing us. Right. And so I'm all about that. And so I invite anybody that wants to grow into this direction to feel free to connect with me right on my webpage. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Jen.
Thank you.
Being here.
Oh, it was amazing.
And that'll bring to close another episode of Agent versus Lender. And if you want to reach out to me or my team, just call us. You can call or text. The best number to reach us is 801-628-7667. And we will catch you again on another episode of Agent versus Lender.
You've been listening to Agent versus Lender. We put it all out on the table, as you can clearly tell, but that's what makes us unique. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on Facebook at Pippin Team or Ron Pippin, on Instagram at RonPippin9002. If you have questions or comments, email Ron at thepippinteam.com. This is Agent versus Lender, signing off.